All right, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us today to learn more about this year's Section 4 Letters of Interest Funding Opportunity. My name is Kate Dippendorfer, Senior Grant Specialist here at Enterprise, and I'll be leading you through today's presentation along with my colleagues Diane Westcott and Teresa Creighton. Okay. So since the group on the call is so large, everyone's been muted upon entry, and we're asking you to submit your questions through the Q&A chat box located at the bottom right hand of the screen. If you could direct your questions to all panelists, that would be great. And then we'll keep track of these and answer all the questions during the Q&A portion. Actually, there may be a few questions that we won't be able to answer during the meeting today, so it would be great if you could send us a follow-up email at rfp@enterprisecommunity.org, and we'll get in touch with you as soon as possible. So the purpose of today's webinar is to provide a general overview of the Section 4 grant program, the LOI application process, and its requirements, and then again, at the end, we'll go through the questions that we've received in the Q&A box. As a reminder, today's webinar is focused on the National Section 4 LOI program. You'll see here a few of our markets are also hosting webinars or meetings related to their funding priorities under the National LOI, so if you'd like to attend, and we strongly encourage you to do so since today's webinar won't be going into too much detail on each market's funding priorities. You can find all of the details on our website. And if you're interested in attending the webinar for our other Section 4 LOI that's in support of our Rural and Native American Initiative, you can find that information on the website as well. So today's webinar is being recorded, and any content in the presentation that appears discrepant from the language in the LOI is superseded by the language in the LOI. All right. So those who are new to Enterprise, this is a picture of our founder, Jim Rouse, and our mission is to create opportunity for low and moderate income people through affordable housing in diverse, thriving communities. And one of the ways that we help CDCs and CHODOs build capacity and create opportunity is through an award that we received from the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Section 4 Capacity Building for Community Development Program, which we're just going to refer to as Section 4 going forward. And the purpose of the Section 4 program is to enhance the technical and administrative capabilities of community development corporations, or CDCs, and community housing development organizations, also known as CHODOs. And grant funds are used to build CDC and CHODO capacity to carry out community development and affordable housing activities for the benefit of households with low income, which for the purposes of this program is defined as 80% AMI or below. And just to share, the National Council of Nonprofits has a great definition for capacity building, which is whatever is needed to bring a nonprofit to the next level of operational, programmatic, financial, or organizational maturity so it may more effectively and efficiently advance its mission into the future. Capacity building is not a one-time effort to improve short-term effectiveness, but a continuous improvement strategy towards the creation of a sustainable and effective organization. So to be eligible for this funding opportunity, applicants must meet the eligibility requirements that are described in Appendix A of the LOI. There are two requirements. The first are HUD-specific requirements, which limit the grant funding again to CDCs and CHODOs. And the activities that you're proposing as part of your application should also directly build the capacity of your organization. So if you're thinking of submitting an application to build the capacity of others, say through a training or technical assistance, that wouldn't be appropriate under this grant program, as the capacity building benefit would be given to those receiving the training or assistance. The second requirement, which is set by Enterprise, is that applicants must have demonstrated staff capacity to successfully manage a federal grant award and perform the proposed grant activities. And demonstrated staff capacity means that your organization has staff, either full-time, part-time, or contracted, that are handling the day-to-day organizational duties, and that they have relevant experience to oversee and implement projects and programs. So we would consider organizations that rely solely on volunteers or donated staff board members or consultants as not having that demonstrated staff capacity. There has been a change to the eligibility of membership groups. After some discussions with our HUD representatives, we are no longer allowing membership organizations to apply. And Enterprise defines membership organizations as an organization where each member is an entity, not an individual, that has membership rights in accordance with provisions of its articles of incorporation or bylaws. Typically, membership organizations have a roster, incentives, and a process for membership. Membership organizations whose primary missions are to engage and strengthen member organizations without also having a primary purpose to carry out community or economic development activities themselves are not eligible to apply. If there are any membership organizations on the call today, after you've reviewed the eligibility criteria under the LOI, if you decide to choose, if you choose to apply anyway, we'll evaluate your organization's eligibility on a case-by-case basis. And again, you can reach out to us at rfp@enterprisecommunity.org if you're unsure of your organization's eligibility. And we'll be collecting some documents like your articles of incorporation and bylaws to help us make that determination. So some general information about the National Section 4 LOI. This funding opportunity consists of a two-step application process, including an LOI phase and then a full proposal phase. And just a reminder that the applicants advancing to the full proposal stage must be invited by Enterprise. Your applications must be submitted through SlideRoom, which is our online application system. You can look in Appendix C of the LOI for more information on creating an account in SlideRoom and how to navigate through the system. You can only submit one application to either of the two open Section 4 LOIs. So this means that if you have a project that could potentially align with the funding priorities and geographies for both the National LOI and the Rural and Native American LOI, you'll have to choose which LOI is the best fit for your proposed project. You cannot submit applications under both. You will also need to select only one program area. We understand that projects may touch multiple program areas, which is fine. However, you will need to choose a single program area that most closely aligns with your proposed project. And then just a note too that any applications that touch multiple program areas will not receive a scoring advantage. Again, you can only select one geography of interest. So again, we understand that some organizations may work in multiple geographies, but again, as part of the application process, you have to choose only one geography of interest. If your organization has an active award or a pending application with other Section 4 intermediaries, which would be LISC or Habitat for Humanity, you can still apply to our LOI, but your request should not be for the same costs that were funded by LISC or Habitat. All of our application materials and information is available on our website. Again, this is open to organizations, eligible organizations operating nationwide. We have a little over $6 million to award, and we're anticipating that our awards will range from $25,000 to $100,000 unless otherwise noted in a market attachment. The average award is expected to be $40,000. And so when you're submitting your ask, just ask, make sure that your request is reasonable and that it aligns with what you're proposing. I will say that awards at the $100,000 amount is pretty rare. All right, so new this year, something else you should consider is the anticipated start date of the grant if you happen to receive an award. So this is new this year, so previous applicants and grantees, you'll want to note this as this is a fairly big change. If awarded a grant, the period of performance will begin on the first of the month following the execution of the grant by both parties, which is Enterprise and your organization. We're anticipating that the grant start dates will range from October of this year through January 2020. This is a cost reimbursement grant program, so no cost may be incurred prior to the period start date. And lastly, we have another new requirement that everybody should be aware of. Applications should be submitted by an authorized representative of your organization. Consultants should not be submitting applications on behalf of the applicant. So we know that, quite a few of you use consultants to help with the application, which is fine, but just remember to have somebody from your organization submit it, and please do not list any consultants as points of contact. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm just going to dive right in. So what you see before you is a list of our 5 main program areas. They align with what Enterprise does on the whole. So the first is housing stability, which supports activities that address housing and security. The second is organizational capacity building, which has to do with stronger, more financially viable organizations. The third area is equitable climate resilience, which supports activities relating to overcoming impacts from physical disasters and resilience measures. The fourth is economic mobility, which has to do with cross-sector alignment between housing and economic mobility. And the fifth is health and housing, which improves residents' health, well-being, and service outcomes. So all of these are described more in the LOI. And I also wanted to point out that Enterprise envisions communities where every person has equitable access to safe, affordable housing, and where race and origin are not a predictor of life outcomes. So we also support and encourage applicants that are using racial equity lens in their program area of choosing for their grant projects. Depending on where you're located in the country, each region, or what we're calling geography of interest, has specific kinds of activities that they may have prioritized. So what you see on this slide is a chart or a table that's listed on page 7 of the LOI. So what you'll want to do is find your project location, then see what the program areas are prioritized, and then the attachment that gives more details to it. So these attachments, they're labeled 1 through 12, and they start on page 14. On this slide, here's a list of all of the geographies of interest. Some may have specific counties or boundaries, so find the attachment for that geography, which will define the boundaries, and that'll help you decide which one. So if you'll note, the first one is national, and you may be wondering, what does that mean? When you select national only if the proposed activities fall outside of the geographic definitions for the 10 geographies that are listed here. So for example, if the Ohio geography of interest is limited to Cleveland, so if you're an applicant and you have a project, you would select national geographic area of interest if your organization is proposing to perform activities in Ohio but outside of Cleveland. Or you select Ohio if your proposed activities will be performed in Cleveland. Now that we have covered all of the program areas and geographies, I will quickly go over the LOI questions that you'll be asked. Here are a few questions that deal with the organization administrative information. So for instance, the name, any doing business as names, federal ID, tax ID number, and then if your organization is a 501c3, you'll need to upload a copy of your organization's letter so that we can verify its status. The billing address, and then also the federal congressional district or congressional representative name of the location of the project that you're proposing. The next set of questions have to do with the primary and secondary point of contact for us. And remember, as Kate had mentioned, we should not see any consultants listed here, only the names of staff in the organization that is applying. So then you'll be asked to describe the general socioeconomic needs of the cities, communities, families, and individuals in your organization's service area, and also what you see as your greatest capacity building need And this doesn't necessarily relate to your grant project, and you won't be scored on it. It's just giving us a sense of the field and where your highest capacity building needs are. The bulk of your LOI will start here, and this is the majority of the narrative questions that you'll be asked. So we'll want a summary of what you're proposing. We'll also want to know the impact of the proposed program, so both measurable and quantifiable impact to both the organization itself and also to low-income families. And I just want to pause here to go over some typical allowable and unallowable costs so you get a general sense if you have an idea of what you'll be proposing. These are also listed more in depth in Appendix B in the LOI, Part C, which is on page 48 if you happen to be following along. So some example of typical costs that we would see would be staff salaries, consultants, staff or board trainings, professional services for plans such as financial planning, and computer hardware or software. Some common unallowable costs that we see in the budget have to do with policy or advocacy work, incentives or stipends or prizes, any kind of fundraising activities, and also startup costs. Again, these are all unallowable, so we will not be able to support that if it's listed in your project. So next slide, please. The next question will be what the relevant organizational experience of your organization is, and then the amount requested for this particular grant project, if you have other funding that supports it as well, and then how will the grant be used. So for example, are you asking support for salaries, and if so, for what? Maybe it's other direct costs such as trainings, or you have some consultants in there, so we're asking you to describe those there. And finally, there are 3 quick questions that have to do with the city, state, and zip code of where the activities will take place. So I'll stop here, and I'll let my colleague Diane Westcott, who is the grant specialist, take you through the end of our presentation.
Thanks, Teresa. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So there are 2 threshold requirements that all applicants must meet. Your proposal must address the needs of households that have an income of 80% AMI or lower. And within this Section 4 program, a household can be defined as a single person, a group of people living together, or any persons occupying a housing unit. Also, your organization must satisfy the eligibility requirements listed in Appendix A, as previously mentioned, including have the demonstrated staff capacity to carry out your grant activities. And again, more detailed information can be found on our website, also by watching our video tutorial and downloading the associated resource documents. Please note that applications failing to meet both these requirements will not be reviewed. So the scoring criteria is pretty straightforward and similar to last year's LOI. This year, however, since we haven't added the 5-point bonus question, we're going to use a 25-point scale. So to be considered for the final full proposal stage, your organization must score at least 20 points. So there are 3 scoring criteria that will be used by our review teams. Your activities need to align with one of our 5 program areas as outlined in the LOI. And we need to know the specific activities the grant will support, and also which one of the program areas, or at least the main program area, that aligns with your proposed activities. We also need your proposed activities to clearly identify the need to build your organizational capacity, and we need to know how the grant will address those needs. Criteria 2 evaluates the possible impact that your proposed activities would achieve if awarded funding. And the impact is going to be evaluated 2 different ways. First, would your proposed activities significantly impact your organization's capacity? And secondly, would those proposed activities impact the needs of the people you serve? Criteria 3 scores the applicant's capacity and prior organizational experience as it relates to your proposed activities. Organizations should mention past housing and community development experience, and you can do that in several ways, such as including numbers for housing units, square footage developed, and so on. So let's review some important points about the application materials and the overall submission process. Like last year, we will be using the cloud-based slide room program to accept all applications. As you most likely already know, the LOI document can be downloaded through Enterprises Grants webpage, and that's also the way that you can get to the application portal through that little yellow Apply Now link. All applicants will need a slide room account. This is very important. If you don't already have one, you can register for an account very easily. See Appendix C in the LOI for instructions on how to do that. Once you've created your slide room account, you'll be able to review all the questions you'll need to answer. And one great thing about slide room is that it automatically saves your work as it's entered, so you can log in and out as many times as you need to complete your application. So some more application information. 72 hours before the deadline, and the deadline being Monday, July 15th, if your organization hasn't already submitted their application, the slide room account owner will receive an email reminder stating this. Within a week of the deadline, so that would be Monday, July 8th, a countdown timer is going to appear in slide room to help the applicants in different time zones know exactly how much time is left to submit. So be aware that is time zone specific, so it is a correct timer. We ask that you please carefully review your application before submitting, because once you submit it, changes cannot be made, and unfortunately, we cannot make any exceptions to this policy. There are a good amount of required questions which are marked clearly. If you have omitted any answers to those questions, a red link will appear at the top of the screen that can take you back to those application questions. So after submitting your application, you'll see a confirmation screen with a confirmation ID number, the submission date, and the program submitted to. A confirmation email about the submission will also be sent to the account owner, and please keep this email for your records. You can also print the submission confirmation, and the application itself is able to be printed directly from slide room. And here's some important information about the submission deadline. Applications must be submitted, as we said, through slide room only by 1 minute before midnight on Monday, July 15th. And as we said, we cannot honor requests to change an application after it's been submitted. So once again, please carefully review your application before submitting it. If you are uploading a IRS determination letter, please don't forget to do that also. And lastly, late or hard copy applications will not be accepted, and we cannot make any applications, we cannot accept any applications submitted outside of slide room. So that being said, we highly recommend that you plan to submit your application in slide room a day or two before July 15th, just in case you run into any unanticipated issues, because it's a crazy cyber world out there, so you just never know. So let's review some important dates, and the first one being the LOI submission deadline, again, 1 minute before midnight on July 15th. This is a firm deadline. As we mentioned, the second stage of the application of the selection process will be by invitation only. So on Thursday, August 8th, we will notify successful applicants through email of our decision to accept full proposals. Please note that the email will be sent to the primary and secondary contact people identified within the application. So here are some handy online resources that you can find near the bottom of the Enterprise Grants webpage. And these are all hyperlinks that you see here that you can access when you receive a copy of this presentation, which will be made available along with the link to the recording of this particular webinar. About one to 2 days from now, you will receive an email with that information. And you'll notice that several of these are called out within the LOI. One in particular that we really suggest that you review is the Enterprise Grants Guide, which is the third one down. So our handy reminders that applicants can only submit one proposal. Under the open Section 4 LOIs, applicants must select only one program area. Applicants will, I know this sounds really strict, applicants will only consider LOIs that meet both threshold requirements, that are submitted only through SlideRoom, our online application portal, and that are submitted at that very important time, 1 minute before midnight, July 15th. We will actually shut down the portal at that time, so that's why it's so important. You will actually be locked out. Requests to change applications will not be permitted. Late submissions, hard copies, and applications submitted outside of SlideRoom cannot be accepted. So where do you go if you have questions? Well, it depends on the kind of question you have. So questions specific to a particular geography of interest or a market area should be sent to the enterprise contact listed on the attachment for that market area. General questions about the LOI can be submitted to the RFP mailbox, and the address is right there. That is constantly monitored throughout the application period, and the 3 grant specialists and some other folks here at Enterprise kind of man that box, and we try to respond to everyone within at least 1 business day, if not quicker. Technical questions related to SlideRoom can be sent to the SlideRoom support email. I hear that they are very good in helping people out with technical questions, so definitely use them as a resource. And also we have a letter of interest FAQ that will be updated and posted on the Enterprise website. We have one up now, and this is usually updated weekly, and probably should be updated weekly until Friday, July 12th. So if you don't find anything in that FAQ and you have a question, just simply email the RFP mailbox, and we'll make sure to help you out. All right, so we're going to open up the, not open up the lines, not audio-wise, but please use the Q&A box if you have questions. We see there's a lot of questions coming in. So the group here is going to try to triage them the best that we can. And anything that we don't happen to get to, please contact the RFP mailbox, and we will be answering those questions. And a lot of them will probably land up in the FAQ also. So,
the first question is, how are funds dispersed? The Section 4 funds are dispersed on a cost reimbursement basis. So after you've incurred the cost, you will submit a disbursement form and then receive the disbursement from Enterprise. The next question is, are you able to share this document with us?
Absolutely. This will be, as I said, it'll be available, the presentation will be available via email. A automated email will go out to everyone who registered for this. So not only the people who are attending, but people who unfortunately might not have been able to. They'll get that. And there will also be a link to the recording that they can listen to.
Are there program areas that are more or less competitive than others?
No, they are all treated equally. So, yeah.
Thanks, Diane.
You're welcome.
Does Hawaii fall under Northwest, or are we not included?
So the geographies of interest that are listed, that table on page, let's see, I think it's page 7, they align with Enterprise's 11 markets plus the national market area. So there's no, so in short, Hawaii, if you're applying in Hawaii, you would select national as your market area since there's not a national enterprise market.
Can you go over the LISC and Habitat for Humanity international limitations again, please?
Sure. So Enterprise, LISC, and Habitat for Humanity are the only 3 Section 4 intermediaries. So we want to make sure that we aren't covering the same costs that LISC or Habitat may have funded you, under one of their grant programs. So you are still eligible to apply for our grant, but we ask that you don't request funds for the same activities or costs that LISC or Habitat have funded.
What is the geography for AMI? For example, in the Mid-Atlantic area, is it the state of Maryland, Baltimore City, or neighborhood census tracts in the city where the work will be done?
So we don't have that answer handy, but we will check in with the Mid-Atlantic market, and we'll be sure to include that information on the FAQ that we'll be posting online.
To clarify, are the funds coming from HUD or from Enterprise? So the funds are HUD funds that are going to be coming from Enterprise to the grantees. Enterprise is the intermediary. We're passing the funds directly through to the selected grantees, but they are HUD federal funds, and all of the federal regulations associated with the HUD funds apply. If your organization is awaiting final IRS determination, is it still eligible to apply?
No, I would say if you don't have your 501c3 status by the July 15th deadline, unfortunately, you won't be able to submit an application.
For this round.
For this round.
For this round. So there's hope.
To qualify for funding as a CHOTO applicant, must you be designated as such by your local participating jurisdiction, which includes having an active CHOTO project? Yes. If an organization applies within a program area, but the proposal is applicable to another program area, will Enterprise reassign the program area?
It's possible if the reviewers in that particular geography or market feel that the application is a better fit for a different program area, and if you're invited to submit a full proposal, then yes, that change may be asked of you.
I think we went over this after this question was asked, but we can ask it again just to reiterate. When is the due date?
July 15th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern.
Do we need to be certified by HUD as a CDC or CHOTO to be eligible? So if you are a CHOTO, you would have to be certified, as we stated before. There is no certification for a CDC, so in order to be eligible as a CDC, you would have to meet the CDC criteria listed in the LOI.
And that's Appendix A.
Okay, yep.
What is the term of the grant? Are these renewable or is it one time? We anticipate starting to make awards around November of this year, and I think we're anticipating start dates between November of 2019 and January of 2020, and anticipating a 12 to 18 month period of performance for those grants, and they are not renewable. It's a one-time grant. However, as Enterprise continues to receive Section 4 funding, we will have more RFPs and LOIs in following years as the funding comes in that can be applied for future grants.
Kate, are you able to repeat the definition of a membership organization?
Sure. And we'll post this in the FAQ as well. So we are defining membership organizations as an organization where each member is an entity, not an individual, that has membership rights in accordance within the provisions of its articles of incorporation or bylaws. Membership organizations whose primary missions are to engage and strengthen member organizations without also having a primary purpose to carry out community or economic development activities themselves are not eligible to apply. Again, we know that, membership organizations are structured differently, so after reviewing the LOI and the eligibility criteria, if your organization chooses to apply anyway, we'll be in touch with you to make sure that you're actually eligible.
Okay, we have a couple more questions about the presentation being made available to the attendees. And yes, the presentation will be made available, both the slides and the recording, in the next few days.
Oh, this is a good one.
Can an organization apply for a national grant if the priority is not one identified in its geographic area?
So if you're proposing an activity that falls within a specific geography of interest, you should apply in that geography of interest. We're accepting applications under all program areas. Some markets have just listed the ones that they're most interested in funding, but if that program area isn't listed on their attachment, you can still submit under that program area.
Are organizations currently being funded with Section 4 funds through Enterprise eligible to apply?
Yes. So one of the questions that you will be asked as part of the application is whether or not you're in good standing with your current grant. And that means that you're submitting disbursement requests, you're incurring costs, you're in touch with your Enterprise point of contact, letting them know about any staffing changes, shifts with the budget, outcomes, things like that. So we would expect that you're in good standing if you're considering applying again.
Thank you. There's a question for clarification that asks if the capacity building metrics are for the applicant organization or organizations served by the applicant organization, or both. I'm assuming that this is referring to the capacity, possibly the capacity building needs question, but I'm not sure. Paul, if you could send us another note as to what you're specifically asking about with the metrics, that would be helpful. Otherwise, we can follow up with you if you send an email to the rfp@enterprisecommunity.org. If our org submits a proposal for staff training on the topic of diversity and inclusion, would we need to already have consultancy quotes from specific training providers? No, you wouldn't need that at this time. Are there geographic areas that will be considered in the national LOI more than others?
No. It's open to any organization that falls outside of the defined enterprise markets.
How do you define the Southeast?
So you can see the Southeast geographic definitions on page 10 and page 39. It's fairly long, so I won't read through it, but pages 10 and 39 of the LOI include that information.
Are there minimum and maximum grant amounts per applicant?
There are no minimum or maximum amounts. Again, you know, we're thinking the range will be, award range will be $25,000 to $100,000, with the average being $40,000. But again, just
It's up
putting
to the reviewers.
To set.
but just putting it out there as well. Again, the $100,000 award range is fairly rare, so we just expect that your requests are reasonable and align with what you're proposing.
If two applicants are coordinating on a project or initiative and are both applying separately, what is the best way to show or indicate the collaboration in their applications?
For the same project? They're collaborating on the same project?
What it sounds like.
I don't know if
There actually should be two applications then.
Yeah, I
Same
was gonna say, I think, the two applicants should determine, you know, who will be submitting a single application for the project. We don't want to necessarily issue two grants to two separate organizations for the same work. But if you have any other follow-up questions about that, if you want to give us more details about the partnership there, you know, feel free to email us at the rfp@enterprisecommunity.org mailbox.
Puerto Rico an eligible geography?
Yes, you would apply under the national geography of interest.
Is the order that the program areas are listed under the geographic areas, program area priorities, the actual order that these areas are being prioritized, i.e. Program Area 2 coming before Program Area 1 in the New York City area?
There is no priority order. I think the New York market supplement, that's just kind of a little glitch in the supplement. But
There shouldn't be a particular order. Correct?
oh, I take that back. I defer to Kate.
If a market has prioritized program areas, they will note that in their supplement. So for New York, they're again accepting applications under all program areas with the following being given priority, which would be Program Area 2, Organizational Capacity Building, Program Area 1, Housing Stability, Program Area 5, Health and Housing.
But I think the question is, of those three listed in that order, are those the priority order? Yes, okay.
So 2, 1, 5.
My apologies.
If we have not been determined to be a CHODO yet, but we meet all of the requirements, are we eligible to apply? So if you're not determined to be a CHODO, but you meet the CDC criteria, you are eligible to apply.
Even though they might not have an actual certification?
If they meet the CDC criteria,
Okay.
then yes, they can apply, even if they are being considered for CHODO certification. Bear with me as I go through these questions. Can a newly formed organization apply, or is there an age limit? Example is an organization that is under 2 years old eligible to apply. Yes, any organization that meets the CDC or CDC criteria or is a CHODO is eligible to apply, regardless of how long the organization has been around.
Can funds be used for construction or demonstration projects?
Yes, they can. However, if you're using federal funds for construction projects, you would need to go through all the federal requirements that go along with construction projects. So environmental reviews, Section 3, Davis-Bacon, and many, many other requirements. Based on the dollar amount of funding that we anticipate giving for each grant award, it may not behoove you to use the federal funds for construction if you have other funding sources available.
And also you have to keep in mind that those activities that would be related to construction have to demonstrate that you're building the organizational capacity. So those two need to tie together, and that could be a little challenging. So keep that in mind. May the grant cover grant writing expenses and what is included in fundraising expenses, and how many applications do you expect? Okay, so we'll take the third question because that's the easiest one. We'll take that first. Last year, I believe, Kate, we received at the LOI stage 419 applications. So
Yeah.
It sounds withering, but don't let that discourage you. And then I can't remember how many people were, how many applicants were invited, but that gives you an idea of the breadth of the applications that are coming in for the first stage. Grant writing expenses. That's kind of a tough one because it needs to show capacity building, and I'm not quite sure if that really speaks. So we would have to see the proposal, or you can give us some more information by emailing the RFP mailbox.
Yeah, I would say generally any kind of grant writing or fundraising efforts are not allowable. We have supported expenses under what we call project-related capital raising. So if you're, let's say, like applying for, I think like LIHTC or other programs, the goal is to be able to tie those efforts to a particular building, affordable housing building at a particular address serving X number of residents, 80% AMI or below. We can explain that better in the FAQ.
If we have further detailed questions about eligibility, do we email rfp@enterprisecommunity.org?
Absolutely.
If you are not selected, is there an opportunity to obtain a critique of your proposal?
Yes, there is. Once, if you aren't invited to submit a full proposal, I believe you'll have 30 days from the time that you receive your decline notification to reach out to us to get that information.
If we already have grants through the HART program, are we allowed to receive funding through this funding opportunity?
Unfortunately, no. HART grantees are not eligible to apply for this particular funding opportunity. Wait, I should add on to that question. If you fall within the Gulf Coast's geographic definition, then no, you are not allowed to submit an application. However, if you fall outside of the Gulf geographic definition, then you may apply under the national market area.
When we say capacity building, would the applicant need to show this, or can we measure capacity building by people the applicant serves? Example, staff skills gained by applicant or staff skills gained by another organization the applicant is engaging. So when we're talking about capacity building, we're talking about building the capacity of your organization, the organization that is receiving the grant. Where do you download the LOI?
So that will be on the enterprise website, the grants webpage. I could give you the whole URL. It's a little bit long, but if you go to enterprisecommunity.org and go to the grants area. Let's see, hold on a minute. Under financing and development, and then you'll see grants web page there, and just click that hyperlink, and it'll take you right to the page. Again, though, in this presentation, there are hyperlinks all over the place for that. So you'll see what's on the screen now. On the bottom of that slide is where you will be taken. Everything is on that page. Everything you could possibly imagine is on that page, including that very important FAQ document that you will be able to download.
Okay. We had a question that if you were a CHODO certified in 2014, 2015, and currently waiting recertification as a CHODO, are you eligible to apply? You wouldn't be eligible to apply as a CHODO. However, if you meet the CDC criteria, you would be eligible to apply. And in most cases, organizations that are receiving CHODO certification also meet the CDC criteria, but please check against Appendix A to verify that you do meet that criteria. If we are waiting on our IRS determination letter before September, but probably not by July 15th, can we still apply? Unfortunately, no, you would need to have that letter by July 15th in order to move forward in the process. What are the reporting requirements for the awarded grant?
So if you receive a grant award, with each disbursement request, we require an activities report to get an understanding of your progress against your stated outcomes, any challenges or successes that you've experienced, any lessons learned, and we also ask if any shifts to your scope of work or budget are required. In some cases, if you're a new organization or new grantee to enterprise, you'll also be required to submit backup documentation for each disbursement request. So this could be timesheets that meet federal timekeeping requirements, consultant agreements, consultant invoices, pay stubs, and then, any invoices, let's just say like supplies, trainings, etc. On our website, we have a list of the types of backup documentation for our most common types of budget expenses under the federal grant requirement document. So that's a good resource to look at. I think we mentioned earlier, these are federal funds, and there are a fair amount of requirements that you'll have to meet. And then at the end of the grant, you'll be required to submit a case study, a production tracker, some closeout documentation.
All your deliverables, if there are any produced during the grant period.
Okay, so follow up about the HART grantees. Is there a time period of eligibility for the HART grantees? For example, if the HART grant ends June 30th, would an organization be eligible to apply?
So I don't know the answer to that. I can check in with our Gulf Coast contact, and we'll get in touch with you. Or if you could email rfp@enterprisecommunity.org, that would be great as well. We'll get you an answer as soon as possible.
Is a CHOTO more competitive than a CDC? No. Both CDCs and CHOTOs will be viewed the same. So we have a question that is from an organization that has never applied to Enterprise for Section 4 but has received Section 4 from another source. Can we still apply? The answer is yes, as long as you're not applying for the same activities that have been funded by your other Section 4 funding source. So if you received a grant from LISC or Habitat, you can receive a grant from Enterprise, but for different project activities. Okay. And we do have confirmation that unfortunately no HART grantees will be able to apply. So regardless of when your grant ends, HART grantees are not able to apply within the Gulf market. Okay, I think we've gotten through most of the questions here. We will go back through the list. I think we may have missed some. There were quite a few. We will pull all of those together in our FAQ and make sure that that is available to everybody. And that will be updated over the coming weeks so that you can make sure to check that out and see if your questions have been answered. And if not, feel free to email rfp@enterprisecommunity.org.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
And Kate, any closing words?
No. Again, we'll have the recording and the slides available on our website soon. So again, thanks for joining us.
Have a good day.